I wanted to come to you all today for another reaction video, this time a video from Indeed, a recruiting company. And so they released a brief 1-minute video to show the kind of unique challenges that trans and non-binary folks face when they're looking for a job, and how subtle, maybe even small gestures can make a huge difference in their interviewing process. So I'll just break it down in 3 frames, and I wanted to give some pointers as to what's happening in each of these different scenes. So the opening one is probably a very familiar one to anybody who has been through an interview process. It's there's prep work that one does to get ready for the interview, and we see this person named Taylor doing the same.
Hi. No. Hi, I'm Taylor.
They're looking at what they're going to wear. They're practicing in the mirror to see what they're going to say. They're also doing some research online to see what they can do. In particular, this is a non-binary person who is trying to figure out how to navigate that within the context of interviewing at a company. So we can see that they have both kind of expressions of excitement, but also some nervousness, which is understandable. Many people feel anxious about interviewing, but for them, there's some additional layers that they're having to navigate. And certainly in many trans and non-binary people's experiences, things can go wrong in an interview process. So that's likely on this person's mind as they're preparing for this type of interview. Another thing to note is that when they're practicing their voice in the mirror, what they're going to say, there could be some anxiety related to that, because of how people perceive people with different levels of voice. So in our society, we typically associate deeper voices with people who are men, and vice versa, high-pitched voices with those that are women. And so when trans and non-binary folks have different pitches than what society expects, that can be both self-conscious for the trans individual, but also create anxieties about how people react to them. So oftentimes people can be practicing to work with their voice in that way. Then the day of the interview comes and we see them in the kind of waiting room of the office, ready to go in and do the interview.
Hi, I'm here for my interview.
What I think is really lovely is that we do see an exchange between another applicant. So they do a brief exchange, look over to each other and smile. So I thought that was really nice. That's not always the case. Some people can have a negative reaction to people who are visibly trans and could either move away from them or stare at them or, you know, make some sort of comment. So it's not always pleasant, but this time it was, and that's good to see. Of course, they're nervous. Their hands are shaking, which is understandable. And they could likely be kind of a lot of thoughts racing through their head about what they're going to do in the interview. Are they going to share their pronouns? Is the interviewer going to understand what that means? And will they react in an appropriate way or a kind way without asking a lot of questions or having concerns of any kind? They could be thinking, did I choose the right outfit? In our society, we often have very gendered ways of dressing. And so some people within organizations can sometimes think that different styles of dressing can be, quote, unprofessional. And so sometimes people can really spend a lot of time thinking about that.
I'm Dorian and I use the pronouns he, him. Are you comfortable sharing how you would like to be addressed?
Thank you for asking. I use they, them pronouns.
Great. Well, I'd love to hear more about your skill set.
The final scene is in the interview room where we see the interviewer taking a very considerate step of introducing himself by his name as well as his pronouns, he, him, and then opens the door for Taylor to do the same. And that seemingly very simple gesture is actually a very powerful one because it allows that space for exchange of pronouns. If the person wants to share in kind. And that you can see immediately the relief on Taylor's face when Dorian does that. And then that allows Taylor to say, I use they, them pronouns. So it's a very quick moment, very simple. There's no big to do. Taylor didn't have to explain, how they come to understand themselves or anything. It's just simple exchange of practical details and matters in this regard. What we don't see in the video, but could be extra bonus points if Dorian noted down the pronoun that Taylor provided and then asked if it was okay to share with other employees so that they don't also make any mistakes. And so that's an extra step that Dorian could take in order to make sure that translates further down the line. Because it's lovely to start strong, but then if you falter further down the road, it's not so great. There's some additional considerations. So it's lovely that there was this exchange of pronouns to show how simple it is and straightforward. Always want to make sure it's voluntary. We're not pressuring people into providing pronouns. If they're not ready to share, it's okay. Now, if there's kind of additional things as part of an interview process that organizations should be aware of when it comes to trans and non-binary folks. One, if you're doing background checks or you're asking for references or there's fingerprinting involved, all of these things can bring up somebody's past name. And there's varying reactions that trans and non-binary folks have. Some struggle with that, but also you might be interfacing with a past employer that only knows that person by a previous name. So there's a lot of complexity when it comes to these types of things. Of course, it's important and necessary, but it's important to do it in a thoughtful and sensitive way. And so there's some additional things to think about beyond just the introduction of one's pronouns. Important gesture, an important starting point, but there's more to the story. But just wanted to flag a few of these things and give you a sense of what is possible. And it's a really lovely video that Indeed has put together in order to showcase just how easy it is and how impactful it is for trans and non-binary folks. So go ahead and listen to the whole video to see the full thing. It's very short, so it won't take very long. But I hope you've benefited from this brief breakdown of what that all entailed and what else might need to be considered as part of an interview process with a trans and non-binary person. Thanks so much. Bye for now.